how anti-venom is made during a global shortage. Now, y'all know I hate snakes. I hate snakes.
And you can see there an absolutely massive yield. And that amount of venom there is enough to kill a couple of hundred grown men, no worries.
Billy Collette is collecting venom to help make life-saving medicine for snake bites.
These guys are literally one of the most toxic snakes on the planet.
Millions of people suffer venomous snake bites every year around the world.
If you get bitten by a rattlesnake, it's like having your hand smashed with a hammer.
The most common way of making antivenom is by first injecting snake venom into animals like horses and then drawing their blood. But producing it is expensive, and some parts of the world are facing a desperate shortage. As many as 137,000 people die from snake bites each year.
We call these neglected tropical diseases, and it's really important that we find ways to solve it.
So why are animals still used to make antivenom? And what can we do to solve this hidden health crisis? This lab is one of the only places in Australia milking snakes.
My mum, in particular, thinks I'm a lunatic because I wanted to do this for a job.
Billy cares for 300 deadly snakes.
Coastal taipans, eastern browns, tiger snakes, common death adders, and king browns.
Let me say thank you for what you do, because this is a job. If y'all had to rely on me to get it done, man, this world wouldn't be in a good place. I'm telling you that, bro. I'm thankful that people are out here willing to do this.
First, he prepares the milking cup.
So if you went to a nightclub or a pub and you asked for a shot, like Fireball, this is what they'd give it into. I know of a fella that was bitten by a large coastal taipan. Within about 15 minutes, he was showing symptoms. He was extremely nauseous, vomiting, sweating. And by the 20-minute mark, he was almost unconscious. He was bleeding out of his eyes, his gums, every orifice in his body.
Jeez.
He was in a coma for 11 days, but he did survive that bite. So this is a tiger snake. So these guys are literally one of the most toxic snakes on the planet. And you can see I'm using the snake hook here to keep the head away from my hand and the rest of my body. And when we're coming into the milking process, basically I drop the hook like that. I have the snake in my right hand. We've got a soft pinning pad there. So this is basically like a foam mattress. I got my pinning device, which is a clear Perspex disc. So what we do is we flick the snake onto the pinning pad like that, apply the pinner, and I can see exactly where its head is, and I can have my fingers right there ready to go. And so that's the snake restrained. And the next part...
Somehow in my head, that would have went all wrong with me. You see how easy he got that done and did that with me? Hands might have been a little bit slippery or something. Went to grab his head, the head would have turned, looked at me. It just wouldn't have played out like that.
Is where I actually milk the snake. So what he's going to do is he's going to think he's bitten me. There we go. Nice yield there. And that amount of venom,
Jeez.
That's enough to kill over 50 adult men.
There are about 600 species of venomous snakes around the world. Concentrated in these hotspots, Australia is home to more than 100 of them.
Australia's got more venomous snakes than non-venomous snakes. We're the only country in the world with that.
Each snake's venom is made up of a unique cocktail of toxins that attack your body. A king cobra's venom often goes after the nervous system and can kill a human in 15 minutes. A viper's venom can stop blood from clotting and cause internal bleeding. And in rare cases, bites can stop your heart. Each week, Billy milks over 100 different snakes, including this coastal taipan, one of the most dangerous in Australia.
I wonder how many times he's been bitten. Milking that many snakes, it's inevitable. He has to have been bitten a lot of times, probably.
Its venom could cause paralysis,
Taipans are so reactive and they're so smart and calculated. They do make me very nervous to work with. And you can see there an absolutely massive yield.
Jeez.
And that amount of venom there is enough to kill a couple of hundred grown men, no worries.
Dope.
So once we milk the snakes, we then freeze it, just in a basic freezer. So the venoms are stored with the different species, and you'll notice taipan venom, once it's frozen, is actually pink. So all the different species have actually got different coloured venom. And down here, we've got the tiger snake, and you can see it's like a light yellowy sort of a colour. Eastern brown's clear. The king brown is a really rich, deep, dark yellow, like you can see here. A few months later, when we've got enough together, we'll actually freeze dry it. We turn this on, we set it to minus 56 degrees Celsius, and basically it freezes, freeze dries, and draws all that moisture out within about 48 hours, and we're left with this crystallized product.
Freeze-dried venom is easier to transport and lasts longer. Billy says the venom from his lab has saved over 250,000 lives in Australia.
Wow.
It's a huge weight on our shoulders, but we're all extremely passionate and proud of the work we do here.
Like, my fear would be coming into work and all those doors to those snakes are open. All of the doors open. That would be my fear. Coming in there and they're just all over the place. They done got out. They done got loose. Something happened. I don't know what.
But snakes aren't the only animals needed. Horses are also key to making antivenom.
We're producing a medication, so the horses need to be healthy, need to be in a good body condition.
Mauricio Guardas is in charge of the farm run by Instituto Clodomiro Picado, Central America's only supplier of antivenom. His team injects horses with small doses of venom. It's important they're precise. Too much could hurt the horse.
It's a very dangerous process. We need to be really careful with everything that we do here.
The horses will begin to produce antibodies, which will eventually become antivenom. The healthier the horse, the more antibodies they produce. Mauricio's team collects their blood every 2 weeks. They wash and shave the horse's neck to prevent infection. Then they extract blood from the horse's jugular vein. It takes less than half an hour to collect 6 liters. Just one blood bag is worth over $500.
We separate the plasma, and from the plasma, we separate the antibodies, and that's what you get injected if you get bitten by a snake.
I'd pay that. No questions asked. I'd pay that $500. That'd be the greatest $500. Just my only question would be, like, how long, if I buy it back, how long does it last or what? Like, I'd buy that. Like, if I could find that on Amazon, I'm buying that.
Scientists have used horse blood to make treatments since the 1800s.
Wow.
Inspired by vaccine science of the era, the French Dr. Albert Calmette injected cobra venom into rabbits and horses. He used their blood to make an early version of antivenom. Animals like horses are still used today because they have a lot of blood to produce antibodies at scale.
We're producing a medication that's able to save lives. It's something that's very appealing and very rewarding.
This lab, 9 miles away, receives the plasma from the farm and converts it into antivenom that's safe to inject into humans. It can protect against a wide variety of snakes, but it doesn't come cheap.
I will say that the cost of production will be around maybe $15 to $20, something like that.
The lab produces roughly 120,000 vials a year. They end up across the Americas and Africa.
Depending on the snake, we may require between 10 or 20 vials per person.
The sooner a victim is treated, the more likely they are to survive and recover quickly. It's a recovery David Williams of the World Health Organization knows well. He has survived 6 snake bites in his life.
The product we used in Papua New Guinea, we had a survival rate of nearly 99%.
But not everyone has access to quality antivenom, and as many as 137,000 people die from snake bites each year. And there could be thousands more unreported. Every year, there are an estimated 58,000 snakebite deaths in India alone. The Irulod Cooperative collects most of India's venom. It pays its members to catch snakes, nearly $30 for a spectacled cobra, or about $3.50 for a saw-scaled viper seen here. The cooperative collects venom from India's 4 most dangerous snakes, which is blended together to make one antivenom. But roughly 65% of India's population lives in rural areas, far from city hospitals, making it hard to get antivenom to victims in time. The same problem exists in sub-Saharan Africa, where as many as 30,000 people die a year from snake bites. Many victims don't go to hospitals, so the data is hard to track.
As the world doesn't look at this problem, it is the poor person at the end of the line in the community that cannot afford it that's the person that's bitten.
Before his death in 2019, Royan Taylor dedicated his life to improving antivenom access for poor rural communities in Kenya.
There is a need for antivenom because we don't have enough antivenom now.
Alvia Ndonge's child was bitten in Kitui County, Kenya, about 100 miles east of Nairobi.
Ilikaa black mpaka ikaanza kuoza yenyewe akaanza kutoa ile harufu ya kuoza. Sasa daktari akasema lazima hiyo kidole ikatolewe ndio isiharibu mkono yote.
The county has to use a motorcycle ambulance to get some victims to hospitals. But not everyone gets medical help in time.
So I keep hearing in time, and I've always heard that. You know, it's critical. The time is critical that you receive the antivenom. So my question is like, okay, say I get bit, I call 911. I'm telling them someone was bitten by a snake. We need antivenom, right? Are they carrying it on the ambulance? And I don't even recall. I used to be an EMT. What was it? EMT intermediate, right? But the paramedics pushed drugs. We didn't. So I didn't know what all they had access to. So is the ambulance bringing that? Do they have that readily available? How do we know? I feel like this is something we need to know.
Nick Alonso's child died after a snake bit her in the middle of the night.
Niliamkia asubuhi nikaenda mtoni nikachota maji. Kurudi nilipatana na ule msichana wangu mkubwa. Kaniambia mtoto kutoka asubuhi hajaamka.
The Kenya Snakebite Research and Intervention Center hopes to develop the first antivenom in East Africa.
No one has produced any kind of antivenom in Kenya. We call it African puffer. This is the most common snake we come across in Africa. It seems to bite many people.
It's also one of the most deadly on the continent. In sub-Saharan Africa, the most effective treatment for a snakebite can cost more than $100 a vial, and victims sometimes need more than 10 of them.
Many of the people who get bitten are breadwinners. So, if they're in a hospital bed, their family's going hungry.
Many victims couldn't afford treatments, so some manufacturers stopped producing antivenom for sub-Saharan Africa altogether. Today, there's a dire shortage of quality antivenom. The Kenya Intervention Center has a database of venom from local snakes, but hasn't been able to set up a horse farm or antivenom lab yet.
You need to have the land. You need to maintain the land, the pastures, do all the maintenance.
to set up an antivenom manufacturing facility to the right specifications is going to cost somewhere between 10 and 30 million US dollars.
A few countries have greatly reduced their death rates, thanks in part to government investment. In Costa Rica, just 1 to 2 people die each year from snake bites. Australia's death count is just as low. Both countries have free antivenom treatment.
Most places worldwide, you have to pay for antivenom, and it is unbelievably expensive. So here in Australia, we are unbelievably lucky that the government looks after us in that way.
These are some interesting ones, yeah.
Researchers like Matthias Bittenbinder are trying to make antivenom cheaper and more accessible. His work is partly funded by the Naturalis Museum, which preserves 30,000 snakes for research.
Some of the jars are over 100, 150 years old. This is a really interesting species. This is the Russell's viper, and this is one of the species that is most heavily feared in India, and also one of the species that we're studying in our lab.
Matthias is researching ways to produce antibodies in a lab, which would eliminate horses from the process and require less venom from live snakes.
You're not using the animals as the factories to produce the antibodies. You can produce them in bulk in the lab. So we're standing now in front of our chamber of secrets. And in here, this is where we keep our snake venoms.
He's studying how venom affects the human cells in this well plate.
We have a venom of a rattlesnake, which we know is capable of destroying the cells. We can see these very prominent holes. So you can imagine that when you get bitten by a rattlesnake and then their venom's caused to punch holes in your blood vessels, then you will bleed out from the inside.
Matthias hopes his research will help scientists develop an oral tablet that would work on all snake bites.
It could be the holy grail, which makes it possible to neutralize the effects of all the different snake species.
That would make it easier to get treatment to victims in rural communities hit hardest.
This is my hope, and to be able to study these magnificent creatures and their effects, but also to help the people that need it the most.
Bro, he figured that out. He might be able to figure out other things too, as well. Like certain diseases that attacks the cells and destroys the cells and different things like that. Imagine taking a tablet for either a snake bite or cancer or something like that. You know what I mean? Taking a tablet, replenish and restore your cells. Man, due to be a hero.
Before now, robots could only replace part of a human job, enough to make coffee or an omelet. But this is Digit, a robot its makers say is ready to do what human warehouse workers do.
And it can lift about 35 pounds. You know, the robot weighs about what a person would weigh. It can reach about the size of what a person can reach. You know, we're really going for that kind of like OSHA regulations and requirements for the robot.
Agility Robotics is funded in part by Amazon, which is investing $1 billion in new industrial technologies. Amazon has already started testing Digit in its Seattle Robotics Research and Development Facility, potentially adding to the company's fleet of more than 750,000 robots. And the company's investors have big ambitions for them.
The fact that it can enter places that were designed for humans and solve those challenges that exist without having to rebuild the environment for automation.
And it doesn't quit.
And it doesn't quit. They're about $250,000, so they're not inexpensive. But, you know, over just a few years, they're worth it.
As of 2022, Amazon employed about 30...
Bro, y'all gonna be getting y'all packages in like an hour or 30 minutes of you placing an order pretty soon from Amazon.
6% of warehouse workers in the U.S., a workforce that often complains about the injury risk of working to get packages to customers in 2 days or less, according to OSHA. Amazon says the safety of its employees is its top priority.
I just really feel this is Amazon's attempt to focus their attention away from those of us that have been injured and are fighting to get medical care and fair wages and safer working conditions. I wish they would spend their money in just making it a safer place to work for the rest of us. You know, those of us.
Kind of sounds like to me they're trying to phase out the employee and phase in the robots
That need jobs and need a paycheck, you know, rather than coming up with technology that could push some of us out the door.
Digit, company backers say, changes the game for any logistics company.
This robot doesn't need to go home and see his family, doesn't need healthcare benefits, doesn't need retraining when you change the process and how it works, and you don't have to worry about turnover and injuries and those types of things.
So considering all those things, $250,000 is sort of a bargain.
It kind of pays for itself if you think of it as 2 or 3 shifts.
But what does it mean for workers if a robot does the job?
I don't think we can expect the free market to ensure that those workers are going to land in good quality jobs. We are going to need some kind of intervention. It is often necessary for government to intervene, particularly with respect to job training. Employers very rarely take on the responsibility for training workers who are not going to remain in that employer's workplace.
Agility is also planning to open RoboFab, a soon-to-be 70,000 square foot facility in Salem, Oregon, with the potential to pump out 10,000 bots a year.
Right now, Digit is multi-purpose in that we come in and program the same robot with no changes to do a bunch of different workflows in a relatively constrained set of environments. But, you know, rapidly it's going to start doing more and more things in the world.
NBC News tech correspondent Jake Ward joins me now on set. So, Jake, fascinating, crazy, maybe a little scary. I mean, it sounds like we're talking about not just using something to help humans do their jobs, but just replacing it entirely. Could this be a new normal on a large scale?
I mean, this is the thing, right? As a tech correspondent for years, I've had companies tell me, you know, well, this technology is for augmenting a human or making a human's job a little bit easier. In this case, it is truly, right, out and out there to replace a human worker. And there are times when you hear people say, well, we're going to replace, you know, let's say I've visited, for instance, a recycling facility where they want to replace the workers there who have to work in a very loud, very dangerous, very smelly environment for minimum wage. That's a job where you could maybe argue that someone doesn't want that job. But Amazon warehouse workers, you know, that's one of the largest employers in America. People really go for that job. And so, you know, we're really, I think, at this sort of historic turning point where suddenly it's no longer the case of you know, when could technology replace a set of jobs, but this is truly something that's built to do that.
So what would that mean for society? And what conversation should we be having in a capitalist society where the industry trade is controlled by private owners for profit? What does this mean for the little guy?
Right. I mean, it is literally Economics 101 gets torn in half when suddenly you have to think about evaluating human beings and our worth as something more than just our productivity, our ability to carry a 35-pound object and put it up on a shelf, right? That used to be how you got paid. Now, if another thing can do that, you don't get paid for that anymore. I don't know that we have an answer in Western society for what that is. And that's why, of course, you have that former Biden labor advisor there saying government intervention may be necessary. He's talking about doing it for job training, but, you know, we may have to do it for just the whole equation of what you and I are worth in a society where robots can do the jobs for us.
Fascinating stuff. So much to watch in the months and years to come.